I don't remember her arrival. No pivotal moment when she walked into my life and began her reign of terror. No, she'd been there as long as I could go back in my mind, and she always held a hammer. I don't remember it, of course, but my mother always said I was a distracted baby, always gazing at something in the corner of the room. My parents probably cooed over me, wondering what an infant daydreams about. I bet they didn't imagine her. That's what I was looking at. Who I was looking at. Who I always looked at. Why didn't anyone else see her? She was there, on the playground at school, looming over the dinner table and watching me sleep, limp hair hanging down her back, and large, clawed hammer in her veiny hands. I tried to tell as soon as I was able to. Anyone who would listen. Imaginative kid, imaginary friend. I was so easily dismissed. They could see I was frightened. I asked my mom and dad every night to tell her to leave, and they did. They would stand in the doorway of my bedroom as if it were some kind of hollow ritual and plead with the entity to go. They never looked in the right spot, and she never flinched. Her facial expression rarely changed, but I could swear that when they pretended to believe me, she would look at me and smile, smug, knowing that I knew that their support was nothing but a lie. And she would swing the hammer, slowly and menacingly to her side, letting her arm drop with its weight. She never tried to touch me, never got any closer than the corner of the room. Not for a long time, anyway. That didn't make sleeping any easier. How could anyone sleep with someone, something like that watching them? Could you? Really? I was a tired child. That's why I didn't see it coming when her hammer swung down for the first time in the schoolyard and knocked my friend Jake off the swing I was pushing. Kids fall all the time. They don't die all the time. Jake did. Jake died. I tried to tell them all what happened, but blaming a child's death on an invisible force just didn't hack it. Especially not when the deceased child had blunt force trauma to the back of his head. I spent years in therapy, adults trying to get to the bottom of what happened. Did you hit him with a rock? There was no rock. Did you push him extra hard? There was still no rock. All while she stood in the corner, sucking the warmth from the room, watching, waiting. At that age, I found it hard to understand why adults were more willing to believe that I was a murderer than the truth. It was her and that fucking hammer. I didn't get any more believable with age, or any less tired. I tried talking to her frequently. She never once answered, just continued to look at me with the smug expression of her soulless face. After some time, I even began to find her somewhat comforting. Fucked up, right? I didn't have many friends after Jake. I just appeared more disturbed. Murderers don't get friends. They shouldn't. I shouldn't have friends. I learned my lesson. I was 15 the second time the hammer came down. This time it hit far harder than it had with Jake. I wish that were the only euphemism, but I mean it literally, too. Meredith, that was her name. My first love. My first kiss. My first. A rite of passage. Destroyed. I never told Meredith about her and the hammer. Instead, I reveled in the distraction, soaking up every piece of sun that came with my beautiful love. I tried not to seem disturbed. Meredith remained just as beautiful as she'd always been, no matter how hard the hammer caved her face in as she balanced, bare-skinned on top of me. She was still beautiful, even with her face mushed to pieces. How can you seem normal after something like that? Please tell me. Suspicious childhood tragedy, and then the untimely, violent death of an unsuspecting teenager. They sent me to hospital. I never told a lie. I swear it was her. She was always there. She lived in my hospital room. Meredith's blood fresh on the metal claw for more time than should ever be possible. More questions. Less credibility. 15 years old, and my life was fucked. They let me out at 18. No evidence. I must have seemed like every other. I'm innocent, criminal. They had everything except proof. Pills, injections, therapy, group work. They thought she went away, but she didn't. If I was crazy, they would have worked, right? I just got better at pretending she wasn't there. Learned to keep my mouth shut. Feign normality. I came home. I've spent almost a decade in this bedroom. A decade with her. My parents stopped telling her to leave. They stopped looking at me. They pretend they're not, but they're ashamed. Almost 30. Still home with 2 deaths under my belt. I wouldn't want me either. I've considered ending it all so many times. But how am I supposed to know that it would be the end? What if she's still there? Even after I die? A decade in my bedroom. No friends. Murderers don't got friends. No love. Poor Meredith. The only thing that kept me going was the little boy across the street. I don't know his name. He's nameless, just like she is. He's full of life. More life than I've ever known. And I watch. Nothing nefarious, nothing creepy. He just reminded me of me. If she didn't come with me. He has friends. One that he plays with all the time, just like I did with Jake. I'm jealous. No, envious. It's just nice to see some happiness. His parents came to the door and shouted at mine. They didn't like me watching. That fucking creep. They called me other things too. Things I don't want to say here. Things that I wondered if my parents believed. After all, they'd never believed me. I didn't stop watching. I just hid myself better. She picked up on it eventually. The boy. The smile on my face when he distracted me from her. It was subtle. I didn't notice it at first. I was busy watching. But she noticed. She noticed everything. She was jealous too. Not envious. And now I'm sitting at my window in the same bedroom I've spent the last decade in. And for the first time in my life, I can breathe. I wasn't sure why at first. I was busy watching the boy. It's sunny today. It's nice. She left. She's never left before, but today she did. She walked out. I didn't notice. Why didn't I notice? Why wasn't I paying more attention? Murderers don't get friends. I should have remembered that. If I'd remembered that, she wouldn't be standing a foot or so behind him, holding her hammer.